Hi friends, how is your quarantine time going? I really hope you are staying safe and healthy. In today's tutorial, I'm going to create a couple of extra large size shaker cards with multiple shaker windows. I will also be combining some really intricate dies with quite busy pattern papers. And I will also be adding some real seashells and other fun elements to the cards. So let's get started with the tutorial. To create the shapes of my cards as well as the shaker windows, I'm going to use the basic shape die sets that also have decorative inserts. They are called Card Builder Squares, and Card Builder Circles, all by Paper Discovery. They are quite big die sets. The largest dies of each set is 8 inches. For the first card, I'm going to use the largest rectangle from Card Builder die set, plus I'm going to need both circles. I will also be using the smallest circle from the Circles die set. I'm going to need all the decorative inserts as well. Also, for both cards, I'll be using the papers from one pattern paper pad by Graphic 45, and it's called Ocean Blue. Well, I was totally blown away with those papers the moment I saw them, and they are even more striking in real life. There are some shades of blue here that are quite deep, but at the same time they are very saturated and juicy. I know the perception of color differs from person to person, but for me, I just can't stop looking at that color just to get enough of that feeling. As for the patterns, they are quite busy, but because the color palette is limited to those beautiful blues plus this kind of sand color, I think the papers are going to be easy to work with, and they are not going to overpower the intricate die cuts. There are also some matching stickers included in the pattern paper pad, and I'm going to use those as well. What I'm also going to use is the plain cardstock. This one is not white, it is milk color, and I think it's going to work great as a divider between the patterns. To start with, I'm going to die cut all the basic shapes out of that milk cardstock, and I'm going to start with a big rectangle. I'm using both cutting outlines together with the trellis insert. I'm using my platinum die cutting machine here with 8.5 by 12 plates. I'm gonna be die cutting all the intricate frames out of milk cardstock, and I'm also going to create the backgrounds for them. For backgrounds, I'm just going to use the outline dies without the insert. I will be using this seashell pattern paper that is also the part of the set. I like using my rotary cutter to trim off extra paper around the dies, and then I can send them through the die cutting machine. By the way, the rotary cutter is also super convenient to trim off extra foil around the die if you like to do hot foiling. As always, the tools and supplies I'm using will be listed down below in the description box, as well as on my blog with links to online stores. Then I'm sticking down the trellis die cut on top of the patterned paper background. I'm using the liquid glue, but of course you can use spray adhesive or any other glue that you prefer. I have created the 4 circle frames exactly the same way as I did the rectangle. I'm going to need one big one, 2 medium ones, and 1 small circle. I have created a card base that is 6.25 by 8.25 inches. I used the same milk cardstock that I used for the frames. Then I'm going to attach a patterned paper background onto the card front. It should be a bit smaller than the card base so that we have a border all around the perimeter about 1/4 of an inch wide. Then I'm going to take all my frames and start playing with them. I'm arranging the circle inside the rectangle frame. Each of them is going to be a shaker window later on. So this is the composition that I ended up with. Then I'm going to lift up the rectangle frame carefully. I'm applying some double-sided tape at the wrong side of the frame and I'm placing it back very carefully, and this way it's going to be stuck to the circles that are touching the frame. Then I just have to take my scissors and trim off everything that hangs off the edges of the rectangle frame. I have also decided to use one of the trim-offs and attach it at the very corner of my card, and this way the space is going to be filled evenly. Next I'm going to need a sheet of acetate. I'm placing my frame on top of it, I'm tracing the first window and then I'm cutting it out with the scissors. By the way, I'm using an awl instead of the marker, and this way I'm just scratching out this outline, and this way I'm not going to leave any marks on a frame. I have created the acetate windows for all other shaker windows as well. Then I'm placing my frame onto the background, but I'm not sticking it down yet because I still have to create the backgrounds for those shaker windows. I have created some fish and coral die cuts out of pattern paper as well as the gold mirror cardstock, and the dies I used are also by Paper Discovery. Then I'm going to play around with the die cuts and attach the corals and the fishes inside the circle frames. I'm using the liquid glue to attach the die cuts right onto the pattern paper background. The coral die is quite large, so I'm trimming the die cut into pieces and just using the parts that I need. I'm placing the large frame back to make sure everything is attached in the right spot, and then I'm starting creating the next scene very similar to the first one but smaller. At this moment I have decided that patterned paper fish doesn't stand out enough against the background, so I'm covering it up with the same die cut but made out of the milk cardstock. And this is how you can make changes and adjust the elements along the way. Then I'm also going to position the circle frame that is not touching the large frame onto the card front, and I'm starting filling in the background. It is pretty much the same process, you're just playing with the die cuts and then sticking them down. This time I've die cut the coral out of gold cardstock instead of the patterned paper. As I'm attaching the fish, I'm tucking it behind the coral a little bit, and this way it's going to look a bit more realistic. Then I'm moving on to the smallest circle and I'm going to attach a tiny piece of coral behind it as well. Next I'm going to attach a piece of acetate behind that circle window, and I'm using the double-sided tape. I'm going to start with the freestanding windows and then I'm going to move on to the ones that are attached to the frame. To fill in my shaker windows, I'm going to use some real tiny seashells as well as some small confetti to represent the sand. I'm adding the sequins and the seashells right in the center of where my windows are going to be, right onto the background. I have applied 2 layers of double-sided tape at the wrong side of the 2 circle windows, and I'm sticking them down right on top of the sequins, and this way I have created the 2 freestanding windows. Then I'm carefully lifting up the large frame, and I'm going to attach the acetate to it first, and then the double layer of foam tape. Once it's done, I'm centering the frame carefully on the card front, and once it's positioned, I'm pressing it down with my fingers to make sure it's nicely stuck and the sequins are not going to escape. Here you can see that all shaker windows are working nicely, but the card is not yet quite finished. You can probably see that there is an empty spot at the bottom left corner, and I'm going to use that one to attach the sentiment. To create a sentiment, I'm going to use one of the matching stickers that come with the pad. I'm peeling it off and I'm poking out all the negative spaces. Then I'm going to attach again the double layer of foam tape at the wrong side, and then I'm attaching it to the card. And at this point I noticed that although I like the layout in general, the card is still looking a bit fragmented, so I need something to tie up all the elements together. So I've die cut a bunch of swirls out of gold mirror cardstock, and then I'm attaching them right onto the card in between the shaker windows. Those swirls or flourishes look a lot like stylized waves to me, and the dies are also by Paper Discovery. I'm attaching this second swirl at the bottom of the card, just next to the sentiment. For the largest swirl in the middle, I'm going to change direction, so this one is going to go from left to right. I keep using the acrylic blocks to press down the die cuts until the glue dries. So this is what the finished first card looks like. I really enjoy how this gorgeous blue looks with the golden elements. Of course, silver would look nice as well, but if you are going to try those papers, try to use some gold. It's just stunning. Now let's move on to the next card. It's going to be similar to the first one, but with a twist. For this one, I'm going to use the squares instead of rectangles and swirls, and I think I will use all the squares except the largest one. I'm positioning all the outlines together with the inserts onto the sheet of milk cardstock, and then I'm going to send them through the die cutting machine. The largest square is 7 by 7 inches, so again I'm using my large platinum die cutting machine. Well, you can hardly see it on camera, but the dies shifted just a tiny bit as I was sending them through, and this way those die cuts are not really good to use on a card. So what I did is I took my time and die cut each frame individually, and this time it worked just fine. Intricate dies might require more of your time and attention, but they are totally rewarding and worth it because the end result is quite impressive. Simple dies are much more forgiving though, so this trick worked with the outline dies right away. Then, as always, I'm attaching the lacy frames onto the plain backgrounds, and I'm using Ranger Multi-Medium Matte in a needle applicator bottle, and I'm also using the large acrylic blocks to hold the die cuts down. I have created all 3 frames exactly the same way, and then I'm going to work on my composition. It's going to be quite simple. It's the 2 large intersecting squares inside the 3rd square, which is the frame of the card. Once I'm happy with their placement, I'm sticking down one square on top of another. Then I'm also going to attach the largest square, the one that is 7 by 7 inches. I'm using the double-sided tape to hold the squares together. Then with the scissors I'm going to trim off everything that is overhanging the edges of the frame. And this is what my card layout is going to look like. The intersecting squares are going to be the shaker windows, so I'm going to use more papers from the pad and I'm going to create the backdrops for those windows. I'm placing the frame over the paper, I'm tracing the future shape of the window and then I'm cutting it out with the scissors. I'm also tracing the small square in the center, since it's going to be the place where I'm going to position the focal image. For the focal image, I'll be using one of the stickers from the set, which is the octopus image. I don't know who the artist is, but they did a wonderful job, so thank you, artist, I simply love it. Next, I'm going to use another piece of paper to back up the second large square, and then I'm going to attach the two backgrounds to one another. Next, I'm going to trim down my acetate to the shape of the windows, so again I'm placing the frame on top, tracing it and cutting out the acetate. The small square in the center, the one with the octopus, is not going to be covered with the acetate though. I'm going to attach the acetate shape at the wrong side of my frame, and this way I have created two acetate windows with the small opening inside. Now again I'm going to pour some sequins right onto the background and then I'm going to position the frame on top. So now I am adding some mini seashell confetti. Then I'm also carefully adding some blue glitter, and that glitter serves double purpose. Besides creating some movement, it also brings down the busy pattern on the background. As I'm pouring the glitter, I have to make sure that none of it is going to get onto the foam tape later on, and this way it's not going to escape the window. So now I have attached the double layer of foam tape at the wrong side of the frame, and I'm pressing it down onto my background with the shaker filling on it. So this is what the card is looking like at the moment, and now I'm ready to attach it onto the card front. Now I am applying more double-sided tape at the back of the shaker windows, and then I'm sticking down this frame onto the blue background, which is 7 by 7 inches, just like the frame. The card base I created is a bit larger than the frame. It's 7¼ by 7¼ inches, and this way when I'm placing the frame on top, I will have a 1/8 of an inch small border all around it. For the card base, I used the same milk cardstock that I used for the frames. To embellish the card, I'm going to use the remaining small real seashells. I am attaching them with the hot glue gun in the middle of the small square in the center, as well as at the bottom of the card. And this is one more thing that amazes me in those papers. When I'm comparing the real seashells with the colors that are used in this pad, I see that they are nearly the same. Then again, just like I did last time, I'm going to attach some golden flourishes on top of the card in between the shaker windows. This time I have used 4 flourishes instead of 3, and I think it's a great way to add some movement to your otherwise static composition. And this is what my second card looks like when it's finished. Both cards are extra large. They both have geometric designs, but they also have some movement because of the waves going all through the card and because of the shaker elements. But the thing that strikes me most is that gorgeous royal blue color mixed up with some sand and seashells and with some golden accents. Well, you might think that I'm sponsored, but I'm really not. It was just one of those moments when I was so much inspired by the product and I decided to share my inspiration with you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you found some of the ideas useful. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!